Well, hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar, which is Turn Transactions into Subscriptions, a growth strategy that sticks. And the goal of this webinar is to help you understand why recurring revenue businesses are more valuable and how you could think about incorporating recurring revenue into your business as well. Quick story. Not too long ago, I had a conversation with a client, and what we were working on together was building out a sustainable business. They wanted to grow and scale their business, which meant more revenue, more profitability, and also have the confidence that as they grew to take on more clients and customers, they were able to scale up with employees. And they wanted the assurance that they would be able to pay these employees if they were to bring them on. And so as we were talking through these problems and what their goals were, we got onto the topic of recurring revenue and subscriptions. And because they're in the trades, they immediately said, that's not going to work for us. That's not the industry we're in. We do such good work that we want our customers to be satisfied with it and not need us for a very long time because of the quality of our work. And I will say that's a very noble aspiration. You want to provide really good work. You want to make sure that the work you do sustains and it sticks. But at the same time, it's difficult to grow and scale and have predictability in your business if you don't know where your customers are going to come from or what products they're going to buy. And so I went ahead and told them a story that I'm going to tell you now. And this story is actually about flowers and the flower business. So, as you can imagine, there are 2 days within the calendar where flowers are a big deal. Those 2 days are Mother's Day and Valentine's Day. In fact, they're so popular in the flower business that 30% of all flower sales happen on those 2 days. The rest of the year, it's kind of hit or miss. And there's not a ongoing demand for very many customers to need flowers on, let's say, a daily or weekly or even a monthly basis. However, there were 2 individuals, their names were Sonu and Brian, and they're the co-founders of Age Bloom. And what they were able to do with their flower business was to incorporate a recurring revenue subscription service into their business. Now, they knew as owners of a flower business that people just don't walk in off the street every day, and it's hard to predict when they're going to come in and what they're going to want flowers for. And so they knew they had to find a segment who wanted flowers on a regular basis. And what they figured out was that high-end hotels and luxury goods like spas often like flowers to be a part of the overall experience, the atmosphere that they're in. And so because they knew this, they knew they had a client who's going to want fresh flowers on a regular basis. So they took all of the people that might potentially want to buy flowers and they segmented it down to this finite group who would be willing to pay on a regular basis just to make sure there's fresh flowers in their hotels on a regular basis or in their spas on a regular basis. And so here's an example of what that looks like. The flowers look great. People walk in. It just adds to the overall experience. The other thing they realized was that flowers will often spoil. In fact, for most traditional flower business owners, 60% of all the flowers that are in their shop will end up spoiling. They won't sell. And so as people try to predict inventory, as they try to understand what kind of flowers do we want, how much of them do we want, they're going to miss the mark on most cases. And most of the flowers they end up bringing into the shop are never going to sell. However, for Age Bloom, you can see that less than 2% of their flowers spoil. Why is that? Because they know who's buying their flowers. They know when they're buying their flowers, and they know how much of those flowers people are going to want to buy. So all of a sudden, they're not losing their inventory to spoilage because all of their inventory is going out of their business. And that's often one of the hidden benefits of a subscription model is that not only do you have revenue coming in on a regular basis, but your supplies are the right amount of supplies. Your costs are better controlled because you know who's going to buy, when they're going to buy, and how much of it they are going to buy. In fact, Sunu went on to say, in our business, it's very predictable because we know how many subscribers we have each month. And if you were to look at their metrics, the average person will spend $29 in a flower store. For one purchase, $29. But with Age Bloom and a subscriber, their average subscriber will spend $4,524. The lifetime value of a subscriber is exponentially more valuable than a one-time transaction. And so going after that revenue has been far more beneficial to them in terms of having more valuable clients as part of their business model. Before we get into further, I want to introduce myself. My name is Joel Calkins. I'm a Focal Point business coach. I also am a principal with One Accord. I work with One Accord to help businesses prepare themselves for a successful exit. I have an MBA from Whitworth University. I have also worked at nonprofits such as World Vision in their digital marketing department to help them grow their revenue via digital products. Same goes with Tire Buyer. That is a direct-to-consumer tire distributor. And so people go online, buy tires, and then we work through the logistics of getting those tires on that person's car. And then I also spent a good deal of my time leading teams, helping build revenue and profitability for Alaska Airlines via the digital products as well. So a little bit about me as we get into it. I have almost 20 years of helping businesses grow their revenue and profitability, often using subscription models to do so. So who is this for? This is really for those business owners who want more out of their business. They want to see it grow. They want to see it succeed. And at the same time, they want a healthy, thriving business and a healthy relationship with their business. And so they want revenue, they want profitability, they want a sustainable schedule, and they want a very healthy business. This webinar is to help those people achieve those goals. Using recurring revenue is one of the levers that someone can pull to make that happen. Now, you may remember the story about the Trojan horse. The long and short of it is the Greeks, as they are trying to conquer the city of Troy, build this horse. They crawl inside of it. They use it as a gift to the people of Troy. The people of Troy bring it in. All of a sudden, they jump out. They conquer the city. Often, recurring revenue can act like that Trojan horse, where as people subscribe maybe with one of your goods or services, that opens the door for far more business. Because the reality is, if people are subscribing with you and they're paying you on a monthly or annual basis for a service they are getting, then they're going to be far more open to hear from you about other things that you're doing, other services you provide. They have built that trust. They have given you their payment information, and they've given you the ability to communicate with them. So all of a sudden, your opportunities to grow your business with that client and increase that lifetime value is far greater because you have this ongoing relationship with that customer or client. In fact, a great example of this is Amazon Prime. In 2003, 2020, Yahoo released some numbers that the average non-Prime customer will spend $450 with Amazon in a given year, whereas the Prime customer will spend an average of $1,400 with Amazon in a given year. That's a massive difference in the lifetime value of a Prime member versus one that isn't. Why do they do that? Because if you're already buying stuff with Amazon, your likelihood to buy from them again is greater. If Amazon already has your credit card, they already know what you're purchasing. They already have demonstrated that they can provide that on a timely manner, then you're going to be more likely to go to them first when you need something else again. And that's the value of having a subscription model, is because you have a relationship with that individual, that customer is going to go to you first and say, hey, here's something else that I'm looking to solve for. Can you help me do that? Or I didn't realize you did that too. That sounds good. Let's go do that as well. So far more spending, much greater lifetime value of when you have a subscription service as part of your product portfolio. So, and that is why it is so powerful to run a business that has subscription products, is because you have the increase of lifetime value, you have the more predictable revenue, and you're able to manage your costs better because you know exactly what your demand is going to look like and what that's going to be. So I'm going to show you some numbers based upon what a business called a Value Builder does. Now, Value Builder actually helps a number of different businesses grow the value of their business. And many accountants and financial advisors and growth advisors will use Value Builder to help their clients grow the value of their business. And so they did a report and they looked at 80,000 businesses that are associated with Value Builder. And they asked them some basic questions. They asked them this question in their assessment, which is, what percentage of your sales or revenue is in fact recurring? And the options you see there are, well, none, or 1 to 25%, or 26 to 50, 51 to 75, or 76 to 100%. And based upon those numbers, they were able to see how their business is performing. And so I'm going to show you what they found so you can see how it might apply to what you do as well. So as this pulls up, you're going to see two numbers. This first light blue bar are all of the businesses that have no recurring revenue. So we're going to look at their metrics, and then we're going to go look at the metrics of those that have recurring revenue as part of their business model. And so businesses with a recurring revenue are increasing the revenue year over year. So we looked at their past year's performance and we looked at this year's performance, and we see that they have been growing. And as you can see here, with the non-recurring revenue, 15% of businesses have actually decreased their revenue over the previous year. And 19% have grown by 30%, but the vast majority increased around 10%. Now we're going to overlay this with what you can see with recurring revenue. And you see the decrease for recurring revenue businesses is far fewer, far less at 11% as opposed to the 17%. You'll also see that the number of businesses that grew up by 10% is greater than those that do one-time purchases that do not have recurring revenue. But here's the ticker. You look at that increase by more than 30%, and you see that 24% of those businesses that have recurring revenue are increasing their revenue by 30% or more year over year. And then if you were to ask them, well, how do you feel about this next year? They're going to tell you for the non-recurring revenue that most of them, again, think they're going to grow by 29%. And they also don't expect their revenue to grow much more in the next year than what it did in the year before, which is why you see the same numbers. But you look at, again, where people expect to be with recurring revenue, they expect the numbers to grow much higher. And so businesses that have recurring revenue are far more optimistic about where their business is going to go and the revenue they're going to achieve over the next year, mostly because they can count on that revenue coming in and they're just adding incrementally to it versus having to recapture the revenue they did last year. So that's revenue. That's great. Let's talk about profit for a bit. So those businesses that don't have recurring revenue, you see, again, 11% lost money, 30% have a profit margin between 0 to 10%. And then about 30% of those businesses have a profit margin of 30% or more. But if you look at recurring revenue, you see 43% of those businesses have a profit margin of 20% or more. So you're more likely to have more profitability in a business with recurring revenue. Same goes with gross margins. You see the gross margins less than 40%. The vast majority of non-recurring revenue businesses have less than 40% in gross margin. Very few have more than 80%, only at 8%. But if you overlay that with those with recurring revenue, you see that businesses with recurring revenue are more likely to have gross margins of excess of 80%. And they're also more likely to have gross margins of 61 to 80%. So they're just going to perform better in the margins than their counterparts that do not have that recurring revenue stream coming in. So that is great. The financials look good. How do they run their business? What does it mean for them as an owner? So what you can see here is businesses with recurring revenue were also asked, what happens if for some reason you as a business owner cannot be working on your business for 3 months? Maybe it's a family emergency. Maybe you just decided to go away and travel the world, whatever it is. If you're absent from your business, what happens to your business? And those that didn't have recurring revenue, 11% said, we're not going to survive. It just isn't possible. Another 35% said, we're going to suffer a lot. And only 37% said, we're going to suffer a little. 17% said, we're going to hardly suffer at all. A lot of business owners that don't have recurring revenue are very concerned about the impact of them being away from their business. Now, you take those same numbers and you ask that same question to people with recurring revenue, what they're going to tell you is they're less concerned about what's going to happen to their business if they're gone. Again, because that money and that recurring revenue is continuing to come in. They acknowledge there might be some challenges. We might suffer a little, but we're going to be okay. And they're far more confident about the position of their business if something should happen to them than their counterparts that don't have recurring revenue. And then if you were to ask them what their end game is, and I will fully acknowledge a lot of people when I have conversations with them are saying, look, Joel, I don't want to sell right now. I'm not looking to sell. I've got decades in front of me. It's not something I want to think about. And the one thing I will say to them is, this is probably your biggest asset, if not close to one of your biggest assets. Like you would want to know the value of your house and why it's valued that, like the way you'd want to know your stock portfolio and how that's performing, you should want to know how your business is situated when it comes to an asset that someone may want to buy someday. And so we do talk about the end game. So when these folks were asked about their end game, they realize that as a non-recurring revenue company, they're probably going to sell it to a third party. Some may sell it to a manager or managers. Fewer will hand it over to one of their kids, but by and large, they're going to have to find somebody to buy it. And most people will tell you, someday down the road, I'll sell it. I'll figure it out when I get there. But you see, that's a common concern. Additionally, if you ask people that have a recurring revenue business the same question, the responses are fairly close to the same. Whether you're a business owner with recurring revenue or a business owner that doesn't have recurring revenue, you have the same idea about what's going to happen to your business at some point when you eventually exit out of that. Now, here's the interesting thing. Most business owners are afraid they're not going to get what it's worth when they go to sell it. This is one of the biggest gut checks for any business owner is understanding what is my business worth? And it's not worth as much as I thought it was going to be. And so understanding why that is. In fact, Pepperdine University does a report every year. They talk about small businesses and they will tell you that roughly 70% of businesses do not exit successfully, which means 70% of businesses don't get the money or the return they want out of that business when it's time for that business owner to leave. And so why is that? Well, that same report will tell you it's because there's a gap between what the seller is willing to sell it for and what somebody is willing to pay for it. Like anything else that you would sell, the customer and the seller have to agree on a price. And when there's not agreement, there's no sell. And this is where a lot of business owners get hung up, is they're afraid they're not going to get the price for their business that they wanted for it. And so you see there, recurring revenue businesses are more confident, but it's still a common concern. But if you look at how they actually do, and the kind of offers they get, what you're going to find is businesses without recurring revenue, if they sell, they'll get 3.3 times a multiple, which means their business is going to sell for 3.3 times their EBITDA, their earning before income, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's a performance metric that investors will use to determine the value of a business. And so let's say if your business has an EBITDA of $1 million, we'll keep it clean, then your non-recurring revenue business has the potential to sell for $3.3 million. Pretty good. Now, but if you have recurring revenue as part of that, nothing else is different, but just the recurring revenue part, your business is going to sell for 4.6 times multiple. So your $1 million EBITDA business is now $4.6 million when it comes to the time of sale, simply because you have recurring revenue. You have more predictable revenue. You're able to manage your costs better. It's far more attractive to a potential buyer someday. So just another reason to think about why recurring revenue might be good as part of my overall strategy for growing my business. And so you see it right there. Now, the other thing is that businesses with recurring revenue are 3% more likely to receive an offer. So without recurring revenue, probably 11% of businesses will have somebody just approach them and say, hey, I'd like to buy your business. But if you have recurring revenue, 14% of those people are going to approach you and say, hey, I like what you're doing here. I want in, I want to buy your business. And so they're likely to get an offer for that business. So you might be asking yourself, okay, that sounds good. How do I do this for my business? I'm sold. I want to incorporate this somehow. How do I do that? So I'm going to share with you 9 methods that are commonly used to help businesses create recurring revenue for their business. And as I do so, I want you to think about what might fit with your business, your model, and the products that you sell. The first one we're going to talk about is this idea of a private club. Now, this idea is you have a limited capacity in terms, or a limited supply of what you can provide, but you want to engage with people who can pay a premium price. So examples of this might be a country club or a tennis club or a golf club. You can think of it as like a lounge access with an airline. Like, it's supposed to be exclusive on purpose. It's supposed to provide a premium experience. So part of this is, with your limited supply, providing something of such great value that the right kind of people will pay you good money for it. If this is something that might be of interest to you, something to keep in mind is, do you have something of limited supply that you could provide? Do you have access to the right customers that might want to have this kind of revenue stream or this kind of product or service associated with them? Things to keep in mind if you want to go down this path. This is not an a la carte service. This is an all-in. So it's all exclusive. People pay the fee for the membership. They get everything at that's available. This is not something that you have different tiers for. You give it for the premium fee that you're asking for. The other thing to keep in mind is, by design, its greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. So you have a limited supply, which means you can only grow by so much. Also, if you try to expand this and a lot of people become to participate, it's not as exclusive as it would be otherwise. And that might be less appealing to the customers that you're trying to build a relationship with. And so you always want to keep those ratios just right. I'll use the same example with a lounge with Alaska. A lounge experience is by nature supposed to be a very premium experience. You walk in, you've got room, you can work, you've got food, you got drinks. If the lounge starts to feel a little bit crowded, then all of a sudden it doesn't feel as great as it would if it had the right kind of ratio of people. And so that's something you want to be aware of as you look to provide this particular option. The next one is called membership model. This is one of those areas where people pay a membership for something that is unique. This works really well for people that have a really niche in their market. So the example here is the Wood Whisperer Guide Guild, which is a membership for people that are really into woodworking, and they get regular content and information that's valuable to them. Now, that's not for everybody. Not everybody's into that, but there's enough people that are interested into that to make it worthwhile, and they'll be happy to pay the $129 a year to subscribe to that. That might be a good model for you when you think about a membership model. I often think about, as well as people in the podcast industry. If you listen to a podcast, you might at times hear them say, hey, for our Patreon subscribers, we have this extra thing that you can join or be a part of. What they are doing is they're providing a little bit of it for free, and they're providing a more exclusive experience for those that want to engage in that membership model. And so this may work for you if you have a very defined niche that you're working in and you have loyal customers that be willing to pay on a regular basis to get the high value content that is relevant to what it is they're looking for. Some things you might want to keep in mind as you do this is you've got to have that niche market. It's got to be something that's very unique. You also want to make sure that you can provide enough content and enough value on a regular basis. If your services drop off or your content begins to drop off, all of a sudden people are going to wonder what they're paying for. And so you've got to be able to commit to and be able to provide enough content on a regular basis, enough value on a regular basis to keep people going and engaging with your offer. This next one is called the network model. Now, this one is something I think we've all been a part of in some way or form, but it's where the more people in the network, the more value it has within the network. So a couple examples of this is if you join a networking group, the more people in that group, often the more value it has. The examples here are in WhatsApp. If more people are on WhatsApp, the value of WhatsApp becomes more valuable because there's more utility in that app. Same thing goes with multiplayer gaming. If you join a multiplayer game like World of Warcraft and there's a lot of people on there, you can get a lot of value. There's a lot of interaction. If there's not so many people, there's limited value in what you can provide. The one that in my life has probably been the most prominent, I have kids that play youth sports, is called Game Changer. Game Changer is an app, it's software that allows you to videotape a game, keep score, and provide play-by-play, and it also tracks the stats. So the value to the player is they get to see video clips, as it does a really good job of creating video clips. As a parent, you get to see all the information. If you can't make the game, you can still follow along. For grandma and grandpa, same thing, they can follow along. And also for a player, maybe for parents, they track stats over the years, so you can kind of see how they've done over the course of time. Now, the real value is when not only the players in that, but the team is a part of it, and then the league or teams across the nation are part of it. All of a sudden, you've got this wealth of value out of this app because they've created this network for it to be fruitful and beneficial. And so this can be a very powerful option. However, here's some things you might want to consider before you go down this path. You need to have a product or service that benefits from having more people engage and interact with one another. You need to have clients or customers who are savvy enough technologically and more socially connected to want to take something like this on. And finally, it takes a while to build that community. It takes a while to build that network. And so it's a chicken and the egg of you need people to make it attractive to bring on the next customer, but the customer is only going to be enticed by the number of people on the app. And so it's going to take a lot of time, effort, and capital to build. And so it's something you want to consider before you go out and you take advantage of this particular model. But it can be a very useful model if you can nurture it, grow it, and you have the time, space, and resources to do that. Then we're going to move into this model called the surprise box. Now, you might have one of these coming to your house. Think of a wine and cheese of a month type club. Think of Blue Apron or HelloFresh or the Bark Box. These are our subscription services where people will deliver something to your home. You'll open it up, and in many ways, you'll just see what you got. Now, you have some idea because if it's Blue Apron or HelloFresh, you know it's food, it's dinner. If it's a Bark Box, you know it's for your dog, but you don't know exactly what's going to be in there. And so there's a little bit of a surprise element, element of, hey, we're bringing something to you. This could be really good for companies that do desserts like chocolates. Flowers can work, coffee works, Dunkin' Donuts will do this for you. But there are some things that you might want to consider along the way if you were to go down this route. One, you need to make sure that you have a customer segment that's passionate about your product enough or the products you deliver that they would be willing to subscribe to it and get a box of not necessarily specific things they ordered, but things that they would be interested in because they like what you do so much. Stitch Fix is another example of this. Secondly, you need to have suppliers and logistics in place to not only fill the box with stuff on a regular basis, because if they're paying you to get a monthly or a weekly subscription, you're going to have enough stuff to provide for them on a weekly or monthly basis, but you also need the logistics to get it there in a timely manner. And so, especially as you're thinking about whether you have perishable items or non-perishable items, if they're non-perishable items, you get a little bit more flexibility, but they're perishable. or they are susceptible to heat or cold, you're going to have to be aware of this as you think about this particular subscription model, because you want to make sure that when it arrives at your customer's door, it's still in good shape, it's intact, it's still fresh, it's still able to be consumed. So logistics is a big piece of this to consider if you were to go down this road. But the supply, the prize and delight factor could be a big win given it's the right customer, the right product and service to make that happen. Now we're going to go to the all-you-can-eat library model. Think of Netflix, think of Spotify. Basically, you pay for a subscription and you get all the things. You get all the movies, all the songs, all access. There's a lot of content. There's a lot of access to information. This is one of those areas where you can provide this. So if you have a lot of content, if you have something that can offer that people can then browse and choose from on a regular basis, this might be a good fit for you. If it's something that people will come back and use often. Now, the question you'll get is, do I have to be a large business with millions of products in one place to make this happen? No, you can actually have a smaller one. If you can commit to creating content again and making sure it's something that people can access, that they can browse, that they can download or view or stream, it might be a good fit for you. And it might be a good way for you to provide access on a regular basis where you just know you got that recurring revenue coming in, you've got your loyal customers, and then you can just add as you go, as it makes sense for you to continue to grow your library. Now, who is this good for? Again, think about what kind of content do you provide? What kind of service do you provide? And is this something that people would be willing just to pay for a monthly fee for to come back to on a regular basis? Are there people who are already consuming your content that you could figure out how to convert into a subscriber as opposed to just maybe somebody that views your content for free? This can be a really good option. But you want to make sure that you've got the subscribers who are willing to actually buy into this and pay a premium for it, and that your content is something of premium value that you can provide for them as well. Definitely a good option as you're looking to think about how you can create recurring revenue streams for your business. Now, this next one's called the front of the line subscription model. There are times when it's nice to get to the front of the line. Think about, for instance, if you are, in this example, trying to get a hold of somebody, get a hold of a service. Maybe this is a car maintenance facility. Maybe this is something to do with travel. It's good to get in front of the line. Maybe it's maintenance for your house. A lot of tradespeople will incorporate this as a recurring revenue model, and they'll bundle it with another one we're going to talk through, which is if something were to happen in the middle of winter and my heat goes out and everybody's calling the same people to get their furnaces serviced, I'm going to get to the front of the line because I paid a premium for a subscription to get that. And so this is a method that a lot of businesses can use that might have fluctuations in not only revenue, but also in demand, depending on seasonality or weather or something going on. It's a way to provide more value to a customer, and the customer has the confidence that if something were to happen, they get serviced very quickly and they don't have to wait maybe on the phone for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to get something serviced, or maybe wait a week to get something serviced. They know that a technician is going to be out the next day. So it's a great way to kind of bump people up who are willing to pay a premium through a subscription service to do so. Now, who is this good for? It's good for relatively complex services. So these are things that people are really dependent on others to solve for them. Like I said, the HVAC or the air conditioning, or maybe plumbing, or maybe it's maintenance of another kind of car maintenance. They can get access to services faster because of this service. These are also good for customers that are not overly price sensitive. They have the income to pay towards something like this just for the confidence and the comfort of knowing that should something happen, they're okay and they can get to the front of the line. And they're good for people that are really busy. For them to take a half day to solve something is not going to work for them. They need that service right away, and they would be willing to pay for that premium experience. They will be willing to pay for this. So often what the insiders will say is this bundles well with some of the other services that we have talked about and we will talk about. So not only getting at the front of the line, but the same idea of, I don't want to have to wait. I don't have time to wait. It's too expensive for me to wait. I'm willing to pay a little bit more to get something taken care of right away, as opposed to waiting for the back of the line to happen or for myself to work through that line. And that pairs well with the Simplifier model, which is this idea of taking a one-time recurring service and turning it into a hassle-free solution. So again, this is something that maybe you have to do on a once occasion, or you're just paying to make that problem go away. So this idea of home ownership comes up, and a lot of trades will use this where, for instance, at our house, tell you a quick anecdote. We moved into our house in 2021. On the second day we were here, brand new house, we found a mouse in the sink. My wife freaked out. That was never going to happen again. So now we have a pest control service that we pay, and their job is to make sure that we never see mice in our sink or anywhere else ever. And so they come, they take care of business. It's a very low touch. We hardly see them or notice when they're here, and they make the problem go away. And so this is a great option for people that have a service that they could provide once, or they could put on a regular maintenance plan to make sure that problem doesn't exist for their customer. So you can think of house cleaners. You could think of, again, HVAC techs. Make sure my stuff runs. Automobile mechanics might want to go into something like this. But really the idea is make my problem go away, make it stay away so it's not a problem I have to deal with, and you just make my life much simpler for having taken care of it. So again, who's this good for? Customers that need something on an ongoing basis. People that have the income to be able to afford something on this like this on a regular basis, that it doesn't take a huge share of their wallet, and somebody who might benefit from having some of these things removed from their plate. Again, think of like groceries or childcare or dog walking or pet grooming or extermination services or rodent control, pest control. Those are all things that somebody may just say, I don't want to ever have to deal with it. I will pay somebody to make it not a part of my list of things that I have to worry about. And so what the insiders will say is this Simplifier model is good for people who need something taken off their to-do list. They have more money than they do time, and they need to get some of their time back. It's good to have an ongoing contract in place, so there's something that they can continue to work through, and there is definitely opportunities for somebody to upsell as you go. So maybe you're starting to do one thing for the individual, and then you can expand it into other things. So think of landscaping. Maybe their job is to make sure your lawn is cut, the weeds are pulled, all of that's good. But hey, when it comes time for them to maybe extend the patio, or maybe they want to cut out a walking path that goes around to the backyard, they're going to look at you first because you're already at their house. You're already providing this lawn care. They're going to look to you for their next landscaping job first, as opposed to maybe going to somewhere else. So there's a lot of opportunities to upsell, cross-sell as you go, because you're already in the door providing a quality service. Now we're going to look at the consumables model. And what the consumables model is, if you're familiar, is on this idea that there's certain things that people buy on a regular basis that they need on a regular basis. And if you just provide it and you ship it to their homes, then they never have to think about it. So here, Harry's razors, or there's some diaper subscription models. So it's really the idea, we know you're going to need this on a regular basis. You're going to pay us a fee, and we'll just bring it to you, and we'll send you more on a regular basis. So these aren't services per se, they're consumables that people have. And so Amazon does this often, can do this with groceries. They can do this with other things where you set up a time and a plan, and they're just on a regular basis send you more. Again, Stitch Fix might be considered the same way, where they send you clothes and on a regular basis, and then you wear them, and then you get more clothes. And so you create that model, and it just kind of goes and goes and goes. It might be something to consider if your business has a consumable product, a physical, tangible product that you can ship to somebody, and then they can actually use as part of their life, and they're going to need it again and again and again on a repeated basis. So a couple things: make sure your supplier can facilitate this. So wherever you're getting your goods from, make sure you have good access to supplies. Make sure you're good on logistics. Again, you're also going to want to brand it as something unique or specific, because you're probably sending people things that have its own brand. So whether it's a clothing item or a razor, they've got their own brand, but you want to package yours into something that's unique, that really describes who you are and what it is you do. And you're going to want to make sure they have a good reason to choose you over their other options. So people are already solving these problems in the world, and you want to be able to articulate why your particular solution is better than what they've been doing in the past, why it's more reliable, maybe why it's more affordable to do it that way, or more convenient. And so things to consider as you think about the consumables model. The next one is this peace of mind model. Think of insurance. There are things that come up in life that we do not want to have happen, but we know that things happen, and so we have insurance. We have things in place that will be there should we need it. And so I mentioned, car insurance. It could be health insurance. You could think of AAA. Nobody wants to get stuck on the side of the road. Nobody wants to lock their keys in the car. Nobody wants their battery to die while they're away from home. But if it does, then they've got AAA. They can call them. They'll be right there to take care of it. And so there's this idea, similar to the other Simplifier model, where they're bringing you peace of mind. The whole goal is, again, I want to know that I'm okay should something happen. And so that's what you're providing with this peace of mind model. It's a recurring fee that people pay for in the event that something happens that they wish didn't happen and would prefer not to have happen. And so this is definitely relevant if you are, again, in the insurance company or you provide a service like an emergency service of some sort. This might be a good model for you just to make sure that people feel like they're covered in case something were to go wrong. Again, a couple things to keep in mind if you're going to go down this model, because often you're dealing with emergency situations or areas that might have higher risk. You want to make sure that your business model can accommodate should somebody need to actually access your services. And you also want to think about fluctuations, because often these services are used in groups. So if there's let's say a weather emergency, you might have more people that are needing your to kind of cash in or call in this service they purchased from you. And you've got to be able to supply that, and you've got to be able to have the income and the revenue streams to facilitate that should people want to actually need to service the stuff that they've purchased. And so you've got to make sure that you understand premiums. You've got to understand that you have the resources and infrastructure to do this. Typically, this is something you add in as a additional offer. So if you already have the people, you already have the equipment, and you just want to provide something like a roadside assistance because you already have all the good and the assets and they're just staying there underutilized, that might be a good way to consider thinking about this particular issue. Now, those are the 9. The one thing I want to caution you on is one of the biggest dangers that you can run when instilling a recurring revenue stream is that if you try to sell it to everybody, it really dilutes the model. You really need to understand who your segment is, what they need solved, and how your product or your subscription service uniquely solves the problem that they have. So you're not going to necessarily be able to sell it to everybody. You're really going to have to define who's the niche that's going to benefit from this. And then how do you directly market it to them? How do you design the product to serve them to make sure you have that good product market fit? So there's a lot of work to do ahead of time to make sure that you've got the right solution to the right problem for the right person as you go into this. So the best approach is like what we talked about with H. Bloom, where they understood as a flower shop, they could sell flowers to anyone. But in order to make the recurring revenue product work, they had to niche down to 5-star hotels, to health spas, people that would be willing to pay a premium for flowers on a regular basis. And so the number of people that can do that becomes much smaller when you go that route. However, the potential for revenue and profitability and predictability in your business is much greater because you've defined such a unique solution to a defined problem for a specific group. And so think about that as you think about what subscription recurring revenue model might be the right one for your business. So a few takeaways as we begin wrapping up our time here. 1, recurring revenue makes your business more predictable. You know how much money is going to come in. You can plan for that. You can prepare for that. You can hire according to that plan with more confidence. You can buy and invest more into your business with the confidence that revenue is going to be coming in. The next thing is going to make it more profitable. We saw that with some of the metrics. Because you have that recurring revenue, you're not having to reacquire those folks. And even the servicing of those clients or customers are going to be less expensive than maybe a one-time purchaser. You're going to have a more profitable business. If you're looking to sell or when it's time to sell, you're going to get more offers and you're going to get higher offers. And all of that is because you have this recurring revenue model as part of your business going forward. So I want you to think about how your business could incorporate recurring revenue into it to make it more profitable, more successful. So spend some time thinking about that. Refer back now. You may want somebody to talk with about this. I'd be happy to sit down with you. Feel free to schedule a consultation with me. I'll sit down with you. I'll better understand your business, what you're looking to solve, who your customers are, and see if we can't find the right recurring revenue solution for your business. The next thing you can do is join me this fall for a fast track mastermind. So recurring revenue is one of 8 levers that you can pull for your business to make it more valuable, more healthy, perform better, and overall make you a more successful business owner. I invite you to join other people like yourself who want to grow the value of their business, to grow the health of their business, to be more profitable, into a mastermind group that over the course of 8 weeks, we will hit on all of these levers and you can begin to learn how it can apply to your business and you can incorporate those principles into your operating system, into your business for yourself. In addition to that, these 8 weeks, you're going to get some one-on-one sessions. You're going to get one at the beginning to help you understand where your business is at. We can talk through some scenarios. And then we can follow up at the end to talk through, now that you've learned all this, you've begun incorporating it into your business, maybe some additional things that we can work on to help you continue to sustain that success that you've gotten over the course. So 2 options for you to think about. I invite you to consider that. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Thank you again for attending this webinar. I do appreciate it, and I look forward to talking with you soon.